Hey, this is Nicolosi, and in this video I'd like to showcase what's new in Mela 6.11. The changelog is quite long, so I'm not going to be able to cover everything, so please check it out for the full details. Okay, I'm running Mela on my macOS in a standalone mode, but of course you can run it on your iPhone or iPad or inside your favorite DAW as an AUV3 plugin. Okay, here I have a very simple synth preset with a VA oscillator set to sinusoid waveform followed by an amp envelope. And this is what it sounds like. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is that VA oscillator now has a new interface. And it also has this new parameter called trigger. And if we click on it, we'll see it has 4 options. But the first 2 modes were already supported in a previous version. You could enable free mode by setting phase to maximum value, and that meant that the waveform would never re-trigger. In other words, when it received no tone, it would always continue from its current phase. And if you set phase to any other value, it was basically in retrig mode, meaning it would set the waveform's starting phase to whatever value the phase parameter was set. Another thing is that amp envelope now has a new parameter called reset, and reset stands for reset to 0. And when it's set to off, the module behaves as before, but when it's set to on, what it does is that when it receives no tone, it will always reset the modulation signal to 0. Now, you may be asking, why didn't this always work like that? And there is a reason for that. So let me put this in off mode and let's make release long here. So I'm going to play multiple notes. So you may notice there was no clicking sound, even though there's only one voice. In other words, the latest note would need to steal previous note's voice. And the reason you're not hearing clicks is because the waveform would never restart, and neither would the amp envelope. It would simply continue from its current value. It wouldn't reset to 0. So now if I set this to retrig mode, we will start hearing clicks. This is because on every no tone, the oscillator restarts from 0 phase, which means if a note was playing a sinusoid and it was somewhere here, and the new note came in and the voice was reused, it would reset to 0, and that would create a click sound. Okay, so let's set back to free, and now let's set this to on. Again, we will hear clicks. Okay, so what's happening now? The waveform doesn't restart, but what happens is that if the modulation signal of the amp envelope is still non-zero, on a no-tone event, it would have to reset to 0. And that creates the click sound. And so this is why the VA oscillator always defaulted to free, and previous version of amp envelope never reset to 0. Now you may not notice this if you have a richer sound. So if I say pick a triangle and turn this to on, and let's say set it to trigger, it's slightly harder to hear. It's even harder if it's, say, sawtooth. So in some cases, this may not be a problem, or you may even like the click sound. But the free mode and reset to 0 being off ensures that you're not going to get the clicking sound. But in some cases, you may want to always retrigger from certain phase. Maybe you have it set to 90 degrees or whatever. You wanted to have that strong attack sound. And for that, now there is this reset to 0 with 1 millisecond delay. Now, what this does is that this emulates voice stealing common in synthesizers. If you're using a traditional synthesizer, it usually has limited number of voices. So when it runs out of voices, it will start reusing older voice. And usually an older voice may not have decayed to 0 yet. So what it does is that it does a quick fade out. And that's exactly what this amp envelope does. It will do a quick fade out to 1 millisecond. So let's hear what this sounds like. As you can hear, we have this in a retrig mode, but we're not hearing clicks. And that's thanks to this new mode. Okay, so let's discuss these other modes quickly. With the rend, on a no tone, you will always get random phase on start. And with the legato mode, when notes are not overlapping, that's when the phase will reset. If I enable note hold and have multiple notes playing at the same time, then every new note tone will continue where the previous note left off. Okay, let's talk about the phase parameter again. So the phase parameter can now be modulated in real time, and the sound will update rather than just waiting for the note tone events. So this means that if you modulate this, you will get like vibrato type effects. And if the modulation is happening at audio rates, you will get phase modulation synthesis. So let me demonstrate. Okay, let's add a LFO module. And as you can see, there's also this new feature where I can insert a lane by inserting a desired module rather than having to create a lane and then inserting a module. So I'm just doing this in one step. Let's modulate our phase here. And let's hear what this sounds like. Okay, now let's discuss the MIDI modules. Okay, so I'm going to set this to a triangle, and then I'll set this to 4 voices, and I'll decrease the release here. So let me first insert a transposer module. And you may recall that previous version made the own parameter performance oriented, and all the modules got updated with the exceptions of the MIDI Processor modules. By performance oriented, I mean that you can modulate it on and use them in real time, and you will get musical results. For example, when you bypass Oscillator, it will fade it out quickly, and you can even modulate the own parameter to decide how quickly it crossfades between the input signal and the signal it's generating. Now, the reason I didn't do MIDI processors is because MIDI processors require a little more attention, and it's a little bit of more work. And with this update, I migrated a big portion of them. So there are still a few left, which I will migrate in the upcoming versions. So what's so special about this update when it comes to MIDI processors? Let me demonstrate. So let's set this to 12. And now let's hear what this sounds like. And I'm going to hold down the note. So what's interesting now is that I was able to turn the transposer on or off, and it would switch the output to the transposed note. Previous version, you would have to retrigger the note to hear the result. Okay, so this makes life easier because you can make modifications without needing to retrigger. And not just that, and I can now adjust the transpose parameter, and we will hear changes in real time. What it will do, it will release previous note and retrigger the new note based on the latest parameter values. We can insert a MIDI logger to see what's going on here. So this is super useful. And you can create algorithmic composition by modulating these parameters. So let me also show you the chord module. So again, we can do the same thing with the chord module. So one thing with the chord module is that it's recommended that you put overlap remover here. And the reason is that, so now I'm able to play a C major chord, but if I adjust this pitch so that it matches the other value, the chord will end up generating same notes, identical notes. And most of the synthesizers will think it's just one note, will not treat them as separate events. Overlap removal will ensure that you will never have two notes with the same note number and channel in on state. So, and so the great thing about this chord module now is that I can adjust all these and hear the chord in real time. Okay, so, and you can create a algorithmic composition by modulating these parameters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert simple LFO, and then I'll set this to 8 bars. I'll set this to triangle, and let's set the modulation intensity to 50%. This means the semitones will change from -12 to +12. And then let's insert, let's duplicate this actually. And I'll set this to ramp up, and maybe 1/8. And I'll set this to a triplet here. Okay, so instead of semitones, I want to modulate the on parameter. So what this will do is that it will turn this module on at this rate. And this first LFO, I will simply transpose this. And to make this sound musical, I'll insert scale. And let's keep this in C major. Okay, so this module will force all the notes to be in C major scale. So, and let's hear what this sounds like. I need to set this to 100%. So. As you can see, MIDI processors are now even more powerful because you can adjust them in real time and hear their effects. And there had been more changes to MIDI processors, which I wasn't able to mention in this video. So please check out the changelog. And as always, if you enjoy using Mela, please leave a review on the App Store. For any questions or feedback, leave a comment below. See you next time.